Bad news, he died young. Good news, he was reincarnated in another world. Bad news, this world has no magic. Good news, there is magical power that can create magic. Even better news, magical power only arises during mating. After reincarnating, Cyan had an older sister 2 years his senior named Mary. Mary had always adored him since childhood. She was lively and adorable, while Cyan, though younger, was the more mature one. However, Mary noticed that Cyan sometimes looked worried like an adult. Once she caught him chanting spells like Gale Slash and Fireball while making strange gestures, but nothing happened. Mary thought he was just playing childish games. One day during dinner, Cyan suddenly asked his father if monsters really existed. His father confirmed they did, along with fairies and other creatures. Some traders even captured and sold fairies. However, his father had never heard of magic. Cyan held a faint hope that maybe his father was just uninformed, but in reality, his father was quite knowledgeable, so the magic Cyan spoke of was unknown to the masses. Curious, his father wondered where Cyan had heard about monsters, fairies, and magic. Disheartened, Cyan gave a vague reply and never mentioned magic again. 3 years later, Mary trained hard every day so she could protect her brother if they ever encountered a monster. She was also better at physical tasks. Touched by her dedication, Cyan felt moved. Mary trained late into the night, sometimes with lads from their village, who preferred to stay indoors reading. Only Mary knew that Cyan's fervent studying was because of the magic he once mentioned. Then one day, 2 young girls saw something glowing in the river. The next day, Mary took Cyan to the riverbank. Sure enough, by evening, many light spots appeared in the water. Cyan stared at them, asking if Mary had told their parents. She said she had shown them before, but they seemed unable to see the lights. Not all adults or children could see them, and those who could didn't all see the same thing. In Mary's eyes, they flickered on and off, but some children saw complete orbs. Mary asked Cyan if this felt like magic, since he had mentioned that magic could create light. She hoped this would lift his spirits. Deeply moved by his sister's thoughtfulness, Cyan thought, "Who needs a bike when you have such a caring sister?" Afterward, they often ran to the riverbank together. However, Cyan had poor stamina because he rarely exercised. Curious about the source of the light orbs, which might be from a creature in the lake, they brought 3 barrels to fill with lake water and added sand, weeds, and fish to each to observe any changes. After a long day of unsuccessful fishing, Cyan appreciated the peaceful time spent with his sister. While chatting and waiting patiently, Cyan promised Mary that if he ever discovered magic, he would tell her first. Just as he finished speaking, Mary caught a trout, a very common fish. At that moment, Lods came over to join them. Mary introduced him to her brother, and all 3 had seen the glowing orbs in the lake. Lods enjoyed the scene too, but like the others, didn't know the origin of the lights. As evening approached, the orbs appeared again in the lake, but nothing happened with the 3 basins of lake water they had prepared, indicating that the orbs were not related to those items. It was impossible to collect all the lake's creatures, so Cyan decided to explore the lake himself. Concerned, Mary jumped in with him. Cyan felt the orbs were warm to the touch and submerged his face in the water, but it was too murky to see clearly. He suspected that these orbs were emitted by an underwater moving creature, likely a fish, as the light spots were shifting positions. After they got out and dressed, Cyan was very grateful to his sister. Meanwhile, Lods caught a female trout, usually found in deeper water, and added it to the bathtub. Surprisingly, the tub soon lit up. The light spots were coming from the trout. It was a mating signal. Mary didn't understand what mating meant, so Lods explained it as a male fish telling a female, "Let's get married and start a family." Mary instantly said that she and Cyan didn't need to mate since they were already family. She even joked about possibly laying eggs one day, which baffled Cyan. He quickly clarified that she wouldn't lay eggs and that siblings couldn't marry. Mary didn't understand why they couldn't marry if they loved each other. Later, Mary asked their mother about it and was scolded. Feeling sad, Mary just wanted to be with Cyan forever. Cyan reassured her that they could always be together, but marriage wasn't necessary. However, Mary felt that marriage was special, and if they didn't marry, they would have to marry others and wouldn't be together anymore. Cyan immediately promised Mary that he would never marry. If their parents wanted an heir, he and his sister would adopt a child, since Mary was the most important person to him. Saying this, Cyan hugged his full sister. Mary couldn't help but hug him back. The next second, light spots appeared on Cyan's body. He speculated that this might be magical power, similar to the light emitted by the trout orbs. This meant that Cyan was inadvertently courting his full sister. They had proven that magical power exists, so magic just hadn't been developed yet. Cyan decided to create magic himself. Can a man really become a wizard if he remains a virgin until the age of 30? Cyan truly believed this and eagerly awaited his 30th birthday to test this theory. Unfortunately, no matter what pose he struck or what incantation he shouted, nothing happened. A whole bookshelf of fantasy novels seemed to mock him. Cyan then resorted to his own made-up magic, but still, nothing occurred. It seemed magic did not exist in this world, leaving Cyan disheartened and dreading work the next day. Unexpectedly, he suddenly died of sudden death syndrome, his last thought being his determination to become a wizard. Cyan, always an outsider and pessimistic about life, had lived thus far fueled by the belief that a man who retains his innocence until 30 becomes a wizard. Although the rumor was false, he actually did transport to another world after his sudden death. However, he found himself in a world without magic. Cyan refused to accept this reality, but the more he investigated, the more certain he became that magic did not exist here. Even his well-informed father had never heard of it. At 6 years old, he had almost lost his will to live until years later, he accidentally discovered the existence of magical power. However, the magical power generated through mating did not stay in his body, and he still could not perform magic. While pondering what to do next, his sister suddenly burst into his room. Seizing the moment, Cyan immediately declared his love for her, causing Mary to blush deeply. The next second, magical power began to emanate from Cyan's body. But what was the principle behind it? Did he have to do this every time to gain a magical response? So absorbed was he in thinking about magical power that he didn't notice Mary getting angry. Realizing this, he quickly soothed her, insisting that he had spoken the truth. Surprisingly, Mary was easy to appease and forgave him. Cyan felt that releasing magical power might not be limited to declarations of love, so he wanted to try more. Expressing his feelings made him more aware of them. What if he embraced his strong emotions internally? Cyan tried to recall the emotions he felt while reading magic books in his previous life, and, sure enough, generated magical power again, though it just made his body glow. This could be proof that magic existed, similar to how electric eels have organs that sense electrical fields and produce currents. Perhaps humans in this world have something similar. So Cyan named this state magical saturation. The thought of successfully using magic made Cyan smile foolishly. Seeing her brother so happy, Mary was also greatly relieved. Unknowingly, Cyan had been in magical saturation for a month and discovered some patterns. First, entering this state required intense emotions of a certain strength. Second, the number of times he could enter magical saturation in a day was limited. Once he exhausted all his magic, he would become incapacitated, but the total amount of magic would increase slightly the next time before it was depleted. Additionally, those who lacked the potential to use magic could not see this phenomenon. However, a problem remained. Cyan could not create light orbs and could only make himself glow. But having researched for so many years, Cyan was not about to give up. He remembered the phenomena he had observed. The trout glowed before producing light orbs, so Cyan released his magical power and tried to transfer it to his arms. But unfortunately, it was unsuccessful because maintaining both rationality and emotion proved too difficult to control. At that moment, Cyan had a sudden idea to change the order of his actions. He thought that if he could gather magical power in his right hand, he would be very happy. Surprisingly, this time it worked. His right hand emitted a stronger glow than before. Eagerly, Cyan smashed his glowing hand against the wall, but as expected, it was just ordinary light. However, he considered it a step forward and named the technique of focusing magical power in specific body parts, magical concentration. He continued practicing magical concentration until he completely exhausted his energy. However, his father wouldn't allow him to stay cooped up in his room every day. Starting today, Cyan, along with Lods and Mary, had to train in swordsmanship because the area outside the city was fraught with magical creatures, and the children needed to be able to defend themselves. Reluctantly, Cyan joined the training, but he was the worst among the three. Lods was considered very promising by Cyan's father, and Mary even had the ability to spar with their father. Unfortunately, their father was too cunning and quickly exposed Mary's feints, landing a decisive blow on her. He praised her for her excellent surprise attack when the opponent's guard was down, advising her to make smaller movements next time. After the swordsmanship training, Cyan couldn't wait to return to his room to continue practicing magical concentration. He could now maintain the magical saturation state 20 times a day, but seemed to have hit a plateau with no further increase in his magical power. Cyan had to take a break, and at that moment, his father came in and asked if he wanted to go with him to Astoria. Cyan readily agreed, as Astoria was the nearest medium-sized town to their home. Besides Cyan, his mother and sister also went along. However, the two children could only move with their parents, giving Cyan no chance to investigate magic. After purchasing everything they needed, the parents took them to a blacksmith shop. The blacksmith was an old friend of their father, who had commissioned him to forge a sword for Mary. The sword was now complete and clearly won Mary's heart. While she was pleased, Mary also felt a bit embarrassed since Cyan received nothing. Cyan stated he didn't mind at all, especially since it was Mary's birthday gift, and she often helped him research magical power. Just then, Cyan noticed a shop and wanted to ask his father about it, but his father indicated that he didn't need to know. However, Cyan had already seen the sign, which read, Elven Merchant. In other fantasy worlds, goblins, only fit to be beginner-level monsters, hold terrifying sway in this magicless world. After some time spent studying and practicing, Cyan can now continuously gather magical energy in the palm of his hand and has become accustomed to controlling it, though it only results in light and heat. He still remembers the fairy merchant he saw last time. Although this world lacks magic, it does have fairies and monsters. Fairies are considered more like natural phenomena or creatures, while Cyan has yet to see a monster in person. Suddenly, noise came from downstairs. The siblings hurried down to find their father and other men ready to hunt goblins. Cyan was excited at the prospect of studying goblins, which might reveal more about magical forces. However, the atmosphere was strangely tense. In Cyan's mind, goblins were just ordinary monsters, but the adults' reaction suggested otherwise. Before his father left, Cyan asked if goblins had the intelligence and physical ability to enter the second floor from outside. If not, those at home could hide upstairs and block the first floor entrance with furniture to prevent entry. His father agreed to Cyan's plan, patted his head, and asked him to take care of everyone. It was unclear how long they stayed on the second floor as the thunderstorm outside grew louder. Suddenly, a goblin sneaked into the village and headed towards their house. Its sharp claws quickly broke through a ground floor window and entered, following sounds upstairs. Everyone held their breath, but a sudden lightning strike caused them to make noise. The goblin, which had moved away, immediately detected their presence and easily broke through the door. Faced with the terrifying goblin, Cyan broke into a sweat, regretting his previous curiosity. Cyan's mother immediately shielded her children but collapsed in terror. The more they showed fear, the more the goblin sensed its dominance. Mary bravely stood up, but her sword was knocked away by the goblin. As it approached, their mother rushed to protect her daughter and got her back slashed. Desperate, Cyan thought of how to defeat the goblin and rushed to grab its arm. The goblin smirked mockingly, radiating magical energy. Seizing the moment, Cyan concentrated his magical energy into his palm and clutched the goblin's arm. The intense heat from the magic burned the contact area. Others saw a bright light emanating from Cyan's hand. The goblin, in pain, flung Cyan away and writhed on the ground. Cyan got up, rushed again, and pressed his palm against the goblin's head, releasing a burst of magical power and eventually killing it. The others watched in fear as Cyan stood over the goblin. Lods was the first to react, grasping Cyan's burned hand in thanks for saving them. The priority was to tend to their mother's bleeding. The villagers, hearing the noise, came to help move her to a bed and dispose of the goblin's body. With no knowledge of medicine among them, Sion recalled a TV show he had watched in another life. The wound was deep, so stitching was necessary. He picked a maid skilled in sewing, and others brought alcohol and clean cloth. Following Sion's instructions, they cleaned the wound, disinfected it with alcohol, and the maid stitched it up, stopping the bleeding. The doctor later admired the neat stitching and asked if a medical expert had been present. Sion's father vaguely responded, not mentioning his son. Thankfully, his mother was now out of danger. He comforted Mary, telling her to be proud of standing up to protect everyone. Sion's father naturally learned about what had happened and asked him how he knew medical procedures. Sion could not reveal his memories of a past life, so he simply said he didn't know why. He also refused to explain how he defeated the goblin, but his father guessed it involved magic. Having always been mature for his age, Sion often spoke of things they couldn't understand, especially about magic. Seeing that her father seemed not to oppose the idea, Mary told him that Sion had been studying magic. To their surprise, their father became angry and insisted they keep this secret, warning that bad things could happen if the word got out. He also reminded Sion that some things in this world are not to be done or accepted as the power of magic was too dangerous. He hoped Sion would stop his research. Before Sion could respond, Mary expressed her disagreement, arguing that it was Sion's magical power that had kept her and their mother safe. However, their father was firm in his views. Sion argued for his right to continue his studies, understanding his father's concerns, but stating that stopping would cause him great pain because it was the power he had always dreamt of. If his father insisted on disagreeing, Sion was prepared to sever their father-son relationship. It was clear Sion was not joking. His father, through a series of probing questions, tested Sion's resolve. Eventually, defeated by Sion's determined gaze, he relented and agreed to allow Sion to continue his research, with the condition that he must regularly report his findings and avoid dangerous activities. Satisfied with this outcome, Sion was pleased and committed to continuing his study of magic. Sion's father not only agreed to let him study magic, but also helped him personally. After lighting a fire, Sion wrapped his hands in magic and placed them over the flames. Surprisingly, his hands caught fire, prompting his father to quickly douse them with cold water. From this, Sion learned how magic interacts with certain phenomena, like how the flames turned blue, indicating the burning of his magical energy. Seeing this, his father had to believe Sion's theories about magic, which only excited Sion more about his research, hoping to eventually create fireballs. He continued experimenting, observing what happened when his magic caught fire, and having his father extinguish the flames when it became unbearable. During this time, Lods came to visit and was relieved to hear that Sion's father was supporting his magical studies. Sion expressed his gratitude to Lods for caring about him after he demonstrated his power, although that incident had upset Mary. Lods hoped Sion would stay close to Mary, who was now haunted by the image of a goblin whenever she held a sword, though she was determined to overcome her fears and continue her sword training. Meanwhile, Sion compiled his experimental findings. He noted that more magic increased the fire's intensity, and that his magic reacted with other elements, not just fire, if the temperature was high enough. Direct contact with magic only produced ordinary fire, and it was possible to channel magic through clothing, though gloves would burn off. So far, his experiments showed the magic was combustible but not practically useful, being more dangerous than beneficial. Sion wished he could release magic balls effortlessly like trout releasing eggs. Surprisingly, Mary and Lods, having heard him mention this, tried it and succeeded immediately. They thought Sion could easily do it too, and hadn't brought it up. Inspired by their experience, Sion managed to pull magic from his hands successfully on his first attempt. He then took a portable flint and tried to infuse the magic into it. Upon striking the flint, he launched a magic fireball. It was his first successful spell in 30 years. He named the spell Fireball Technique. Though it was still in the experimental stage and not ready for combat, a month had passed since the goblin attack, and Sion hit another research bottleneck. Launching the Fireball Technique required concentrating magic in the stone, but the more commands he issued, the less magic he released. He knew he needed another approach. He then saw Mary practicing her swordsmanship, her hands covered in cuts. Even when their father called for her to stop, she insisted on continuing. It wasn't until Sion called out to her, addressing her as "sister," that she quietly left with her wooden sword. Sion asked his father about electricity, specifically if there were any creatures or objects that could produce lightning phenomena. He decided to shift his focus from fireball magic to exploring electricity. His father thought hard but didn't have the materials Sion needed. However, he recalled someone mentioning a similar phenomenon and took Sion to town. This time, Mary chose to stay behind, locking herself in her room. At the weapons shop, the owner recognized their description as referring to Thunderstone, which, although not hard to purchase, was difficult to transport due to its tendency to discharge electricity, making it risky to move. Sion immediately thought of rubber as a classic insulator and asked if there were any trees nearby that secreted a white, sticky resin, though the shopkeeper had never heard of such trees. Besides rubber, the next best option was glass. Sion then inquired about mica, a thin, brittle mineral that is often used to make insulating paper in the real world, though such technology didn't exist in their world. The shopkeeper had some in his collection and showed them to Sion. Sion wondered how to use mica to transport the Thunderstone. Then, he asked if there were larger pieces of mica available. The shopkeeper mentioned that larger sizes could be purchased at the trading post but would cost more. Sion's father immediately supported the purchase, saying it was a small price for his son's interest. They returned home with both the Thunderstone and the insulating mica. At home, Sion placed the Thunderstone on the mica and released his magic. When the magic collided with the electrical force, it produced a brilliant flash of light, but it was only momentary. His parents thought he had failed, but Sion knew he had succeeded. His magic didn't burn near the Thunderstone. Instead, it flashed brightly, indicating that his magic contained elements besides combustibility. He concluded that magic could mimic and amplify the phenomena it contacted, opening the door to using various types of magic. The challenge remained: how to convert magic into electricity and release it from his palms. As Sion pondered, he inadvertently released a ball of magic. He realized that magic didn't have to be spherical and began experimenting with other shapes, discovering he could manifest whatever he imagined. This encouraged him to think more freely about his magical expressions. Eager to share his breakthrough, Sion went to tell his sister but found she wasn't in her room, only 2 bandages left on the bed. He found her by the river, still practicing her swordsmanship. Realizing he had neglected her feelings while absorbed in his research, he apologized. Mary had always supported his magical ambitions, yet he had arrogantly dismissed her suggestions. However, Mary's issue wasn't his words. She was involuntarily jealous of Sion. As the older sibling, she felt she should protect him, but on the day the goblins came, she felt helpless and was eventually protected by Sion. Angry at her own incompetence and jealous of Sion's strength, she could only train harder. While talking, Mary broke down crying. Sion stepped forward and embraced her, and they apologized to each other. Their magic surged as they reconciled. Mary became even more attached to Sion afterward, wanting hugs and kisses every day, but Sion, busy with his experiments, had to keep her at a distance to avoid accidental harm. Sion tried expanding his magic like inflating a balloon, thinning its edges until it almost covered the entire courtyard. However, this large magic ball couldn't be ignited with flint. He then tried condensing his magic more tightly into a smaller, more powerful sphere, which he named Firelight Gas. Attempts to use denser magic balls to touch the Thunderstone only produced sparks, likely due to insufficient magical power. As Sion continued experimenting, mastering the ability to release and shape his magic at will, he tried extending his magic towards the Thunderstone from a distance, causing a violent reaction as the electricity seemed to strike at him. Magic moved in the direction of the flowing magic, so when Sion's magic reached the Thunderstone, the current naturally flowed back to him. Sion felt close to a breakthrough but lacked enough knowledge to progress further. After calming down, he sensed something odd, as if the world was too eager for him to invent new magic. Then, the shopkeeper visited Sion's home, apologizing for using Sion's method to transport Thunderstone and making a profit. However, he had transported too much and couldn't sell it all, leaving his shop cluttered. He hoped Sion could help him sell it quickly. Curious, Sion asked why he spread the Thunderstones apart. Demonstrating, the shopkeeper brought two pieces close together, and they reacted violently, exactly what Cyan needed. Cyan asked the shopkeeper to smelt the thunderstone, resulting in two metal blocks. After smelting, the metal lost its reactive properties. Cyan wanted to know at what stage of smelting the electricity vanished. The shopkeeper recalled seeing sparks when the stones were broken, suggesting that the electricity likely disappeared during the heating and melting process, indicating that the key stage was the firing. Cyan conducted experiments right in the shop, using his magic to remotely ignite a blue flame in the furnace. The shopkeeper was shocked by this, and Cyan explained to him what magic was. His family stayed to watch the shopkeeper smelt the metal, and soon he produced two more metal blocks. This time, when the blocks came close, they immediately emitted a strong electrical light. Cyan confirmed his hypothesis and named the metal Thunder Iron, recognizing its unique properties. They continued to produce Thunder Iron non-stop for 3 days and nights, smelting all the thunderstone into metal blocks. Realizing merely smelting the metal wouldn't suffice for sales, Cyan created the lightning lamp and a remote ignition device. These innovative products, which only needed the removal of an insulating cover to shine brightly or ignite from afar, were expected to be very popular. The shopkeeper was about to praise Cyan as something significant, but was interrupted by Cyan's father, realizing he was about to say too much. Cyan, however, took note of the unfinished praise, but didn't dwell on it, as he had another inspiration during the making of the lightning lamp and the igniter. If successful, his magic would take a significant leap. Indeed, the new products sold out immediately once they hit the market. After returning home, Cyan tirelessly began new experiments. Today, he tested a candle under a cover. Without oxygen, the candle extinguished. What about a magical flame? Cyan lit a blue magical flame and covered it. This time the candle did not go out, showing that magic could enhance natural phenomena independent of external conditions. Cyan then released a fireball with flint and had his sister project magic towards it. Surprisingly, the collision caused an explosion. Cyan combined the clues he had gathered and approached the thunderstone, shooting magic at it and waiting for the electrical force to reflect back. He finally understood that what they had been studying was not just magic. Magic could react with the air, as he felt air resistance while trying to release lightning magic. The firelight needed no oxygen and could burn solely on magic, suggesting that magic acts like air, amplifying the properties of substances it interacts with. Cyan made another breakthrough and developed composite magic that combined different types of magic or magical energies. He then commissioned the shopkeeper to make insulated gloves, eliminating the need for flint. With a snap of his fingers, Cyan could shoot a fireball, use his other hand to amplify it, and then conjure a larger fireball and release thunder magic. His thunder magic was finally successful, and he wept with joy. Mary rushed to comfort her brother, and the three adults watched them with satisfaction. That night, as Cyan went downstairs to the bathroom, he overheard a conversation between his parents and the shopkeeper in the living room. From their discussion, Cyan learned a shocking truth. He was not his parents' biological son. The next day, Cyan pretended not to know about the revelation and continued to train his lightning magic, which was becoming stronger. Mary and Lods quickly praised his progress, but Cyan was distracted by his father's words from the night before. If he and Mary weren't biological siblings, could they potentially marry? The thought made his face turn red. To banish such ideas, he immersed himself in studying composite magic. Through experimentation, Cyan discovered that synergy magic could enhance both power and focus. Using synergy magic with firelight achieved its highest form, dual firelight. When applied to lightning, it became chain lightning. When magic touched firelight, it created a firelight bomb. Further refinement turned it into a dual firelight bomb. However, combining firelight with lightning or firelight with firelight, and similarly, lightning with lightning, produced no new effects. Frustrated by this bottleneck, Cyan returned to the river to concentrate magic in water. The magic floated on the water surface and met some resistance, consistent with his previous findings. However, no reaction occurred when magic combined with water, leading him to wonder if water was unsuitable for magic. Undeterred, Cyan tried a different approach, resulting in a few water droplets emerging as he commanded the water to rise, indicating potential in water magic, although it seemed lacking in practical application. He tried to condense moisture from the air unsuccessfully, so he expanded his range, inflating his magic like a balloon before concentrating it into a sphere of water. Cyan named this water magic Stream and taught it to Mary and Lods, who learned quickly. Surprised by his rapid development of water, fire, and lightning magic, Cyan realized it was time to advance to the next stage of his research. That day, he and his family, along with Lods, went to town. Cyan persuaded the shopkeeper to take them to the Adventurers Guild for registration. His next phase was practical application, joining monster hunting missions to see how magic worked against monsters. This outing was kept secret from his parents, but upon entering the guild, Cyan's father appeared, not to scold, but to endorse their efforts, revealing a diamond-level adventurer's badge. Although he hadn't said much, the three youngsters apologized obediently. It turned out their father had sensed something was amiss recently, but hadn't expected them to undertake such a dangerous activity. Cyan explained the reason, and his father accepted it, warning them to inform him next time for safety, as having two high-level adventurers with them would be safer. The next day, Cyan and the group went on a quest together. They soon encountered some beasts in the forest outside the town. Cyan's father demonstrated his strength first, effortlessly defeating several monsters, which surprised Cyan with his overwhelming power. However, more creatures soon appeared. These gnolls were easier to handle than goblins and served as a suitable first battle for Cyan and his group. Mary overcame her fear, and she and Lods stood in front of Cyan. Cyan used his left hand for magic and his right for firelight. He released two magic orbs which collided and exploded violently, blowing away a group of gnolls. However, one gnoll slipped through. While Cyan was preparing another spell, Mary quickly stepped in to block an attack for him. Lods also acted, taking down two more gnolls. Just as Cyan released his chain lightning, Mary and Lods each took down another enemy. Before they could catch their breath, another gnoll charged at them, but Cyan quickly cast another spell and finally cleared the group. Now, Mary had completely overcome her psychological trauma, and their father praised their excellent performance in their first battle. He encouraged them to gain more experience and eagerly led them to the next den. By the end of the day, Cyan and his friends were exhausted and aware of their deficiencies. The adults let them rest while they went to collect the spoils. During the break, Cyan noticed something stirring in the den and curiously walked in. Mary and Lods followed. Inside, they found a small, frightened-looking sprite. The children let it go, and the sprite quickly left without looking back. That evening, their father brought the disheveled children home. Their mother immediately noticed their condition and playfully dragged her husband into their room for a light-hearted scolding, proving she was the most formidable in the family. Cyan and Mary, not daring to hide anything, quickly told the truth. However, their mother had already heard about it from their father and was just worried about their injuries. She knew their father could get overly focused and likely arranged for them to fight as many monsters as possible. That's why she was upset. In this family, Cyan and Mary were free to do as they wished, as long as they took care of themselves. Afterward, their mother took them to the bathroom to bathe. The three of them ended up in the same bathtub. For Cyan, who had the soul of a 30-year-old man, this was paradise. Yet he dared not entertain any inappropriate thoughts, as they were all family. 2 years have passed since Cyan and his team started hunting monsters. Now, Cyan has developed various types of magic, including an air spell that instantly defeated a minotaur. Soon after, Mary and Lods joined him, and all three have grown significantly. Mary recently killed 20 goblins, while Cyan's ability to sense magic has greatly improved, allowing him to gauge a person's magic power at a glance. However, they have yet to find anyone with greater magic power than Mary or Lods. Recently, the number of monsters seems to be increasing, and the trio visited the blacksmith's shop where the smith had prepared new gloves for Cyan. After inquiring about their recent activities and learning they were about to advance to the silver rank, the blacksmith expressed his admiration. Eager to try his new gloves, Cyan then faced a question from Mary about his future plans with his magic skills. Cyan hadn't really thought about it, assuming he would continue to learn more. Mary, however, felt that Cyan's magic was already greatly benefiting everyone and suggested that his skills could be applied elsewhere, potentially in more important tasks. This idea was somewhat beyond Cyan, who didn't dwell on it and continued practicing magic with his father at home. Cyan had even mastered combining spells to the extent that he could now outsmart his father, creating traps by increasing the air content underground. Running while casting spells was physically demanding, so Cyan planned to enhance his physical training, hoping to one day fly like a bird. Mary, who had also improved her swordsmanship over the past 2 years, still couldn't beat their father, but was already a first-rate swordsman at only 12, with much greater physical strength than normal for a girl, which Cyan suspected might be due to magic or magical influence. Fortunately, there seemed to be no adverse effects, and their father encouraged Cyan not to worry too much. After their training, Cyan and Mary went to help Lodz with pest control, enjoying a delightful time and planning to compete again next year. However, the sky suddenly darkened, and it began to rain heavily. While the villagers ran for shelter, Mary collapsed. Cyan called out to her, but she was unresponsive. They brought her home and alerted their parents. When their mother arrived, Mary opened her eyes but remained unresponsive, resembling a soulless doll. Her symptoms were similar to a mysterious sleeping sickness spreading in town, which rendered its victims completely immobile and unresponsive despite being conscious, with no known cure. The immediate priority was to get Mary to a doctor, but the night was when beasts were most active. Cyan insisted on going with his father and sister, fearing it would be more dangerous for them alone. His father reluctantly agreed. As they braved the storm, Cyan, taking care of Mary in the carriage, noticed a large red light in the sky that his father couldn't see, possibly related to magic. Then a pack of bloodthirsty wolves attacked. Cyan told his father to focus on driving while he used his magic to gather rainwater and launch it at the wolves as water bullets. Despite his efforts, the number of beasts was overwhelming, and they were nearly surrounded when the wolves suddenly dispersed, seemingly sensing something more threatening. A dangerous presence emerged from the forest, and Cyan sensed trouble, urging his father to speed up. However, a giant, terrifying ghost appeared before them, visible only to Cyan. The ghost emitted a chilling scream, paralyzing Cyan with fear. Thinking of his sister, he regained his courage and attacked with water bullets. But physical attacks were useless against the ghostly entity. As the ghost reached out toward the carriage, Cyan remembered incinerating goblins with magic-wrapped hands and tried touching the ghost with his magically charged hand, which proved effective. Realizing Cyan was a formidable opponent, the ghost shifted its attack toward Cyan's father. In that instant, Cyan's father finally saw the ghost clearly. The next second, Cyan charged out of the carriage and struck the ghost heavily, purifying it. His father caught him as he fell from the air. The two talked as they continued their journey and finally reached a clinic in town. Inside, they found it filled with people suffering from the sleeping sickness. The clinic's assistant told them to wait their turn, mentioning that everyone there had braved the rain and no exceptions would be made for anyone. When it was Mary's turn, the doctor confirmed she had the sleeping sickness, but admitted they had yet to find a cure. All they could do was have family members look after the patients. Cyan broke down, lashing out at the doctor as memories of happier times with his sister flooded his mind. It was hard for him to understand how she could have changed so suddenly. Why did this happen to Mary? The day after Mary was diagnosed, Cyan and his father decided not to return to the village and stayed in the city instead. The blacksmith offered them the use of his warehouse, concerned for the child's plight. Several days passed with Cyan constantly by Mary's bedside. His father came to him one day, saying someone wanted to meet him, but Cyan was reluctant to leave his sister's side. It was then he realized 4 days had passed since the ghostly attacks began in the city, with many people killed by an invisible force, likely the same type of ghost they encountered. Because Cyan had fought it off, his father believed he had the power to confront the creature and prevent more victims. Despite his father's emotional appeals, Cyan showed no interest in the lives of others, focused solely on staying by his sister's side, even questioning whether his father cared about her. His father, deeply concerned, would have sacrificed his own soul to save Mary if he could, but no such opportunity existed. The only thing he felt he could do was to persuade Cyan to help others and reduce the number of victims. Cyan remembered Mary's words at the blacksmith shop, believing in his ability to save many and hoping he would help others if the time came. Realizing that if Mary were conscious, she would not want him to be so indifferent, he agreed to help. However, as he spoke, he sensed something was wrong. Mary had no magical aura, He rushed to the clinic to check other patients with the sleeping sickness and found that none of them had any magical aura either. Moreover, there was no one in the town with any magic, although when they had first arrived, the streets were full of magically endowed individuals. Now, not a single one remained. Science speculated that those with the sleeping sickness were individuals with magical potential. It seemed he had to resolve this issue himself. His father took him to meet someone who had requested to see him, and to Sion's surprise, it was the Duke overseeing the region. The Duke lost his composure after hearing from Sion's father about a potential solution. He had long since grown tired of his duties, having assumed the role of Duke would be easier, and that he could delegate most tasks to his subordinates. However, he found himself overwhelmed with daily responsibilities. Sion's father quickly explained Sion's discovery. The Duke already knew of Sion's studies in magic, and was only interested in knowing whether gathering those with magical aptitude could help eradicate the monsters completely. Sion immediately responded negatively, pointing out that learning magic takes time, and most qualified individuals were afflicted with the sleeping sickness. The priority was to address this condition first. Sion proposed using live experiments, noting that normally, a healthy person's magic would naturally replenish during rest. However, those with the sleeping sickness were losing their magic. If something was preventing their magic from replenishing, artificially supplying them with magic might restore their health. However, the risks of this approach were still unknown, so Sion suggested experimenting on monsters first. The Duke agreed and provided collaborators skilled in medicine and monster research, also promising manpower to assist in hunting the monsters. The first assistant was Kohler, the clinic's medical assistant. The second was Rafina, a young squad leader from a Marquise's family. And the third was Bridget, a taciturn monster expert. To establish his credibility, Sion demonstrated his magic, greatly impressing the trio. He then explained the principles of magic and mana, noting that overusing magic could lead to extreme fatigue, causing one to lose the desire to act or even move altogether, symptoms similar to those of the sleeping sickness. The group then got into action. Kohler returned to continue work at the clinic, while Sion and the others went to hunt monsters. Previously, Sion used his magic to kill monsters, but if they were to treat patients with sleeping sickness, they needed to inject magic into the patients steadily, hence the need for live experiments with monsters. Just as they discussed this, a goblin warrior appeared. Rafina, excited at the sight, burst out of her armor and transformed into a blonde young lady, charging at the enemy with lightning speed. With Sion's support, they quickly slew the goblin warrior, but then remembered they were supposed to capture a monster alive for their experiments. Recently, Sion has been busy researching laziness disease. Lodz also wants to help, but she has duties in her village and cannot frequently visit the town. Seeing Lodz's disappointed expression, Sion quickly reassures her that there will surely be tasks only she can accomplish. One day, Kohler took Sion to the clinic where a mild case of laziness disease had been reported. The patient could still speak. Sion held his hand to feel for magic, and discovered that only a little magic was left in his body, suggesting that laziness disease could indeed be triggered by a magical phenomenon. With Kohler's permission, Sion allowed the patient to touch his magic. The patient reacted. His pulse quickened slightly. His eyes spasmed and his fingers moved during the magic infusion. It was unclear whether these were signs of improvement, so they planned to observe him over a longer period and gradually increase the magic dosage. Afterwards, Kohler reminded Sion to keep magic and magic-related topics private, as the medical community is highly sensitive about research into laziness disease. If a cure is confirmed, it would cause a major stir in the medical world, and too much attention could hinder Sion's research. Kohler repeatedly advised caution, and Sion appreciated his kindness, which embarrassed Kohler, revealing his tsundere nature. That night, Sion visited his sister Mary and touched her hand with his magic-infused hand, though it seemed futile. Sion reminded himself not to be too obsessed with the results, thinking back to his experiences with developing magic. It was just retracing old steps. The next day, the squad went to hunt magical beasts. Sion infused magic into an unconscious werewolf beast, increasing the dosage continuously. The beast struggled progressively until one arm disintegrated into powder. He managed to infuse up to 50 units of magic, while typical goblins and gnolls only withstand up to 30, indicating that the required magic dosage is proportional to strength. The burning effect on magical beasts from magic contact seemed like purification, which is different from humans. However, they couldn't conduct human experiments. So, Cyan returned to basics and asked Lods to bring him some trout. Surprisingly, the trout tolerated all of Cyan's magic without any adverse effects, unlike magical beasts and more like humans in producing magic. It was unclear whether humans would react like trout or magical beasts. Lods understood Cyan's hint and immediately offered to be experimented on, as she was the only other conscious being with magic besides Cyan. Willing to do anything to help save Mary, Cyan thanked Lods and reminded her to call a stop if anything felt wrong. Initially, her hand just felt warm, then her whole body heated up. When the magic reached 50 units, recalling the werewolf's fate, Cyan instinctively let go, but Lods grabbed his hand again, and the experiment continued. This time, Cyan provided his maximum magic output, and Lods remained unharmed. They then tried sustained provision, and the conversation turned flirtatious. Cyan quickly suggested including Kohler next time. A month has passed since that night. The town guards have removed all the lightning lamps, as they are no longer needed. Kohler doubted that the magical creature known as Phantom would appear again, and didn't believe in the effectiveness of the lamps. His teammate Rafina scolded him harshly, reminding him that their research progress was all thanks to Cyan and they should trust his judgment. Kohler quickly surrendered. Cyan then asked Bridget about magical creatures in other countries. Besides the Phantom, everything seemed the same with no new creature sightings reported. Could it be that the Phantom only appears in this region? Bridget speculated that this creature might be from before the Luger War, a war fought by all countries against magical races 1,000 years ago. It was led by someone named Luger, or possibly referred to a destroyed kingdom. As time passed, by the 3rd month, Cyan discovered that providing magic to patients with mild laziness disease under effective conditions resulted in signs of activity, marking significant progress. By the 5th month, it was confirmed that an excess supply of magic could induce laziness disease, suggesting the condition might be caused by an overflow of magic rather than a lack of it. Although the guards became increasingly lethargic, the Lord continued to produce lightning lamps. On day 211, Cyan found that the magic supplied by others could track the gradual loss of magic in patients' bodies. By day 300, due to frequent depletion of his magic, Cyan started exploring how to increase his magic capacity, but nearly a year passed without significant results. The existence of the Phantom remained unconfirmed, leading some to speculate whether it was a sign from Lugure, though no evidence supported this yet. 2 years later, Cyan was now 12 years old. The patient with mild symptoms could now smile, and his family was very grateful to Cyan. It was a rare gathering today, unfortunately without his sister Mary. Concerned that their daughter hadn't awakened yet, his parents hoped Cyan would rest. Others agreed, telling Cyan he didn't need to work so hard and shouldn't bear all this responsibility. However, Cyan wasn't forcing himself. He was motivated by the desire to see his sister wake up, doing everything of his own volition. Hearing this, his parents were reassured. That evening, Cyan visited his sister and suddenly noticed a blood-red sky outside. He grabbed a lightning lamp and rushed out, encountering Lods in the corridor, who had also noticed wing-shaped shadows. Cyan asked Lods to stay and look after his sister and mother while he went to inform the Lord. Stepping outside, he was stunned by the sight of the sky full of phantoms, invisible to those without magic. Cyan watched as a phantom followed 2 soldiers, warned them, and then charged to purify the phantom. At that moment, the soldiers finally saw the creature. If so many phantoms attacked, the entire town would be in danger. Cyan quickly reported this to the Duke, who fortunately had continued producing lightning lamps. The Duke calmly ordered soldiers to patrol with a lamp each. Cyan joined the assembling defense force where the captain disliked him, thinking Cyan was making up stories about invisible monsters to amuse the Duke. The soldiers also doubted the effectiveness of the lightning lamps against such unseen creatures, not believing in the existence of phantoms. Then Rafina, along with the 2 soldiers Cyan had saved earlier, came to Cyan's aid. Rafina was also unpopular in the troop, and the captain assigned Cyan to her squad. Cyan led Rafina and their group to check the movements of the phantoms, heading directly to the highest point of the main city wall. From there, they could overlook the town and its surroundings. Unexpectedly, upon arrival, they saw 5 phantoms attempting to enter the city. It was too late to run down, so Cyan used wind magic to jump down quickly. Without time to explain to the guards, he immediately cast a fireball. Although he missed, the fire magic seemed to make the phantoms visible, allowing the guards to see them too. As they approached, Cyan first cast a gas flame, followed by a lightning strike, eliminating the 5 phantoms. Rafina arrived shortly after and explained to the guards that they were there on the Duke's orders to combat invisible creatures. After dealing with the 5 phantoms, Cyan still had a bad feeling. Suddenly, he thought of something and rushed back to the city wall. To his shock, he saw over 100 phantoms outside the city, all poised to attack. Some were already heading towards the town. Cyan ignited magical flames outside the city walls, illuminating the area so the regular soldiers could also see the phantoms. Being able to see the enemy meant they could join the fight. At that moment, Cyan realized that maybe his purpose in this world was to create magic for such a time. As several phantoms charged at him, Cyan used multiple types of magic continuously, casting various spells. Rafina and others assisted him by throwing torches. However, the magic flame Rafina held extinguished upon touching a phantom, and one of them reached out to grab her. Concerned for her safety, the 2 soldiers Cyan had saved earlier broke their lanterns, dipped their swords in wax oil, and ignited them with magical flames to hand back to Rafina. With her sword reignited, Rafina swiftly killed a phantom. These soldiers fought bravely with the help of the others, giving Cyan a moment to breathe. Despite using magic so frequently, Cyan noticed his magic was not depleting, wondering if this was also because of the Night of Hecate. Since that event 2 years ago, laziness disease had spiked, likely due to an imbalance caused by excessive magic supply and consumption. However, there was no time to ponder further, as Cyan had to address the immediate problem. Unexpectedly, the phantoms began sacrificing themselves to extinguish the magical flames, allowing others to rapidly infiltrate the town. Cyan fought while simultaneously reigniting the flames. Eventually, he unleashed a powerful spell, Rain of Fire, purifying all the phantoms in front of him, but it nearly drained all his magical energy. More phantoms continued to come, so Cyan had to rely on others to protect him with torches. Just as he was overwhelmed with thoughts of preventing their entry, the blacksmith uncle arrived with other adventurers. They shot arrows lit with magical flames, forming a barrier that made the phantoms visible. They then targeted the phantoms accurately, a tactic devised by Bridget, who had summoned the adventurers to the scene. With everyone's help, Cyan and Rafina fought more effectively, eventually eliminating all the phantoms. After the battle, the captain arrived late with his soldiers and immediately accused Cyan of deceiving everyone, demanding to know where the phantoms were. He stubbornly believed Cyan had ulterior motives for being close to the Duke. The adventurers stood up for Cyan, but the captain dismissed them as liars and ordered their arrest. However, the soldiers stood still, and suddenly the captain was lifted into the air, caught by a phantom that was noticeably different from the others. Just because he didn't believe what Cyan said, the man ascended right there and then, only to be slammed to the ground the next second by a hand. A white-haired man appeared in the air. Cyan could feel the magic of the red aurora floating in the air, all residing within this man. He dared not make a move. The man introduced himself as Wilf, a demon. Everyone was confused by this term. What is a demon? Only Cyan sensed trouble. Wilf did not want to say much. He had been imprisoned for thousands of years and had just been freed. Naturally, he wanted to cause chaos. With a snap of his fingers, his immense magical power caused the city walls to collapse and the ground to explode. Everyone scattered in panic. Cyan did his best to protect those around him. Bridget got up from the ground, realizing that demons truly existed. She had always wanted to meet this race from 1,000 years ago, but clearly, this visitor meant no good. Cyan told Bridget and Rafina to run. Only they could see and use magic. Others had no way to fight this man. The many ghosts that appeared at night were just a prelude to this monster's arrival. The real battle was just beginning. Cyan was unsure of the man's strength, but could feel the magic emanating from him, hundreds of times more than his own. Hearing this, an uncle who was a blacksmith immediately stood up to protect the children. Meanwhile, Wilf began wreaking havoc in the town. His casual attacks were crushing soldiers like ants. Thinking of his mother and sister still in the city, Cyan could not retreat. The blacksmith told Rafina and the others to go back and guide everyone to safety. Rafina knew this was the best they could do, and reminded Cyan to be careful before she ran back. Wilf was heading into the city. Cyan told the blacksmith to circle behind for a surprise attack, while he ran ahead to act as bait. Since only he could see the magic, dodging the attacks was the most effective strategy. The blacksmith had no choice but to follow the plan. Cyan rushed forward and used water magic to protect 2 soldiers. Wilf noticed the magic around Cyan and saw his red hair and eyes, asking if he was a descendant of Lugure. Cyan didn't understand what he was talking about. Wilf muttered to himself, seemingly realizing something, saying those traitors always played smart. But seeing that Cyan knew nothing, he felt relieved. Poor child, manipulated and naive, you will die here without knowing anything, Wilf said, as he began to gather his attack. Cyan prepared to defend. A blast of magic shot towards him. He immediately used wind magic to jump into the air while releasing numerous water bullets. However, these were too weak to harm Wilf. Cyan was beaten without the ability to retaliate, forced to keep retreating. Wilf then began to prepare a fire spell. There was no time to gather more water bullets. Was he really going to die here? Stunned, Cyan stared at the opponent while images of everyone appeared in his mind, finally settling on his sister Mary's smiling face. How could he just die? He had to protect everyone. On the other side, surviving soldiers and adventurers arrived at the clinic, reporting that a powerful stranger had turned the city gate into a blaze. Kohler couldn't help but worry about Cyan. Meanwhile, Bridget and Rafina were guiding everyone to safety. Upon hearing that Cyan was in trouble, Rafina handed the evacuation task to 2 team members, informed Bridget, and rushed back to support Cyan. At the same time, Cyan slammed his palm onto the ground, causing a large section to collapse. Wilf was caught off guard and missed his strike, allowing Cyan to narrowly evade the attack. Cyan immediately released a thunderstorm spell, but the magic dissipated before it could reach Wilf. Cyan was stunned. He understood using water to extinguish fire, but the concept of electricity should not exist in this world. Yet Wilf knew that once it touched the insulating magical atmosphere, the electricity would vanish. Wilf commented that Cyan's magic was interesting, but all magic has its counter properties, whether water or lightning, and these were merely the basics. Wilf then attempted to unleash a more powerful lightning attack, but before he could release it, the blacksmith suddenly appeared behind him. However, his great axe did not touch Wilf, and the blacksmith was repelled and then wrapped in lightning. Just then, Cyan's father emerged, but his long sword was also ineffective against Wilf and was casually flung away. Now, Cyan was the only one left who could fight. Wilf praised Cyan's determination, worthy of Lugir's descendant, and offered to make him his kin, granting eternal life and great power at the cost of losing his human self and becoming a puppet. Cyan, of course, refused and turned to run, but was caught by the neck by Wilf, who revealed his sharp fangs and bit into Cyan's neck. Just as Cyan was about to give up, a small sprite suddenly appeared in Wilf's mind. Wilf released Cyan, clutching his throat in pain, and accused Cyan of accepting a fairy's blessing. He ranted about dirty blood entering his body and began vomiting furiously on the ground. Enraged, Wilf attempted to deliver a final blow to Cyan, but the attack was not fatal. Moreover, Rafina had returned. Wilf tried to launch another fireball. Cyan asked Rafina to help him raise his hands, and with his last bit of magical power, he prepared a spell. Simultaneously, the blacksmith and Cyan's father attacked Wilf from behind. Now was the moment. Cyan, recalling all his experiences and knowledge of magic, unleashed the strongest spell he had ever cast. Amidst a white blaze, Wilf let out a hysterical scream. This was the last lesson Cyan taught him. If magic meets flame magic, the consequences are unimaginable. The ancient vampire was burned to ashes in his reluctance. But Cyan, too, exhausted his magical and physical strength and fainted. Before closing his eyes, his only thought was his desire to see his sister again. Cyan woke up from a nightmare to find himself safe. His mother rushed to hug him tightly. Later, Kohler checked Cyan's body and found he had been asleep for a week, which explained his mother's deep concern. Upon hearing this, his father and the blacksmith uncle also hurried to visit him. Although they had defeated Wilf together, if nightmares descended again, more terrifying creatures might appear. Cyan was temporarily relieved to hear his friends were safe. However, since he had been unconscious, the ghosts continued to attack ordinary people, causing over 400 casualties. Cyan felt somewhat guilty, but if he hadn't dealt with Wilf first, the town's fate would have been much worse. Kohler comforted him, saying he should be proud of his actions, not guilty. Looking out the window at the night, Cyan realized it was evening. The light in the room was due to fluctuations in his magical power, which he discovered had significantly increased. He immediately asked his father to take him to see his sister Mary. Following the method he had researched, he infused magic into Mary's body. With his greatly enhanced magical power, Cyan continued to output until Mary actually opened her eyes. Although they still lacked luster, Cyan didn't stop. He increased his effort until Mary responded and even tried to speak. Everyone hoped for a miracle. Finally, Cyan reached his limit. But fortunately, Mary's magic also returned to her body. She held Cyan's hand and softly called his name. Mary had regained consciousness, and Cyan's efforts were not in vain. Everyone was moved to tears by this scene, and Cyan cried with joy. He then healed other patients, and everyone was profoundly grateful to him. With that, the sleeping sickness issue was finally resolved. Next, Cyan set out to explore his origins. The Duke called him, his parents, and the blacksmith uncle to provide answers. Cyan's first question was, "Who am I?" He already knew he was not his parents' biological son. Curiously, the Duke had listened to Cyan's advice regarding the sleeping sickness and ghosts, even before he had shown any magical abilities. The Duke did not answer directly, but first asked Cyan's parents for their views. Prepared for the truth, they listened as the Duke revealed that Cyan was a descendant of Lugur. The Lugur family had fought alongside humans against demons 1,000 years ago, characterized by their red hair and eyes, and wielding a mysterious power called secret arts. They had sealed the demons, who cursed the Lugur family to destruction as they died. 12 years ago, a woman holding a baby appeared before the queen, declaring the child the last descendant of Lugur and the only hope for saving the world. She asked the queen to raise and guide him, or humanity would be doomed. The queen was skeptical and couldn't raise him openly, so she entrusted him to her old friends, Cyan's parents. Though not related by blood, Cyan had long considered them his real parents. He hadn't expected that his family was actually nobility without its own land, but the Duke had entrusted a part of his land to Cyan's father to manage. Few knew this. If it were widely known, some might exploit Cyan for their own gain. The adults had always protected Cyan from such threats, which is why his father had initially opposed his study of magic so fiercely. The blacksmith uncle then asked how Cyan had knowledge far beyond ordinary people. Cyan couldn't reveal he was reincarnated from another world, so he vaguely answered that the knowledge just came naturally to him. The Duke also told Cyan that he should soon receive a letter of request from the queen. Cyan understood it was time to leave. Mary, having been asleep for many years, spoke haltingly, but still expressed her longing for her brother. She asked Cyan to hold her hand. In her sleep, she had been conscious, trapped alone in darkness, unable to move or do anything, but she had always heard the voices of Cyan and their parents, which had given her the strength to endure. The next day, Cyan and his family left the town and returned to their hometown, which they had not seen for 2 years. During these 2 years, Cyan had deeply studied the sleeping sickness, discovering that it resembled a type of magic that enhanced bodily functions, belonging to the category of internal magic. Starting with the sleeping sickness, Cyan explored the operation of magic within the human body and applied these insights to create new magical boosts. He was able to take off from the ground and turn his magic into a shield. A few days later, he indeed received an invitation from the queen. Cyan packed his bags and prepared to travel alone to the capital, saying goodbye to everyone. Rafina hugged him heartily, causing some disapproving looks from others. Kohler quickly stepped forward to pull her back. Bridget also cheered for Cyan, and Lods even wanted to go with him. However, Cyan comforted her, promising to return right after handling his affairs. Finally, he came to Mary, who had only recently awakened and was about to part with her beloved brother again. Mary cried, saying she would be very lonely, but she couldn't stop Cyan. She could only hope to recover quickly and then go to the capital to find him. As Cyan stepped out, he saw 2 rows of soldiers standing respectfully on either side. It turned out that these men were sent by the Duke to escort him to the capital, and Rafina was also going along, which explained why she wasn't sad at all earlier. Before leaving, Mary gave Cyan a pendant as a birthday gift, chosen together with their parents. With this pendant, no matter how far apart they were, their hearts would always be closely connected. With tears, Cyan parted from his family, determined to complete his mission and return safely, no matter what obstacles lay ahead.